2024 is the year the Audi R8 died. To mark the occasion, we've brought together an early original with the very final variant. So how far did the R8 come during its 18 years on sale, and which is the best R8 of all? The R8 is the car that proved Audi could do great driver's cars. When the original arrived in 2006, it blew us away. It felt more like a Lotus than an Audi. As the years went by, the R8 grew more sophisticated, more expensive and more powerful, and its V8 engine sprouted 2 more cylinders. R8 production began in July 2006. The car shared its underpinnings with the Lamborghini Gallardo, but the 4.2-litre naturally aspirated V8 was Audi's own. It produced 414 brake horsepower and 317 pound-foot of torque, sending that to all 4 wheels but heavily biased to the rear axle. It weighed 1,560 kilograms.
This early R8 is one of those car park cars because it feels right, it feels brilliant even before you've left the car park. Immediately, the ride feels absolutely beautiful. The steering just feels right, the seating position, everything just feels right. Imagine what people must have thought in 2006 when this thing landed, and until then, just about every fast Audi has been fast and sure-footed and all those other attributes, but also blunt and wooden and lifeless and numb. And then this thing arrives and it's none of those things. We did not expect a car like this from Audi. Certainly not in 2006. And it's still absolutely gorgeous.
The earliest R8s can be bought now for just £25,000, a bargain for a car this good, as long as you can find a well cared for example. If you can, you'll enjoy one of the great modern sports car driving experiences.
Even on this bumpy stretch of road, the ride has this plushness, this sort of quality to it. It is amazing for this kind of car to ride like that. It just feels poised, it feels balanced. It's got this lovely sensation to it. Even when you're just sort of pottering about, it feels so well sorted, so well resolved. It's got this really sweet balance as well. There is a bit of understeer when you're really hustling the car through a tighter corner. You feel the front axle push just a little bit. But if you drive within the understeer, the balance is really nice. If you've got the space to make the car move around, you feel how heavily rear biased the 4-wheel drive system is. This thing will drift, despite being 4-wheel drive. It will do, on track, the big smoky oversteer stuff. The word to describe the chassis is fluid, really, really fluid. So un-Audi-like, certainly when this car was new. And the steering is actually beautiful, really sharp, really crisp, really accurate, super responsive. It's such a lively, alert, agile car. And that's before you come to the powertrain, which is absolutely the best thing about this car. 414 brake horsepower, not a load of torque, it's a high revving engine, so it doesn't feel neck-snappingly quick. Some people might find it disappointing actually. I don't find it disappointing one bit, because the power is so linear, the way it builds to the red line at 8,000 RPM. As long as you're not lazy, you use the revs, you use the gears, and it sounds good as well. High revving, naturally aspirated V8, not really loud, but a lovely, mature, sophisticated soundtrack. It's a great engine. And then this gearbox, open gate, Ferrari style, so you get the click-clack as you shift through, and it's a really good shift, matched to the clutch pedal. The drivetrain on this car is exceptional. I've always been smitten with the original R8, particularly the V8, particularly the manual. I keep saying I'll buy one someday, and at 25 grand, the trouble is, like any exotic sports car that was 80, 100,000 pounds when new, these things can present you with frightening bills. That's probably why I haven't done it yet. The key is to buy the best example that you can, maybe save up even longer and spend more, because the more you spend, as long as you find a great car, the more you'll enjoy it. I still think I'll have one someday. When that day comes, you better believe I'm going to look after my R8 like it's my own child. Just don't tell my daughter I said that. In this job, I drive lots of brand new cars that are factory fresh and prepared to the highest standards by car manufacturers. I also drive lots of older cars, some really good ones, some not so good. And I can tell you the difference between a great car and one that feels worn out, that hasn't been looked after, that has warning lights on the dash is massive. It's not like you lose a little bit of the joy of the ownership experience. You lose the whole lot. And one of the best ways of keeping your car in good condition, proper diagnostics.
The Carly OBD scanner isn't just another scanner. This one goes as deep as car manufacturer and car dealership diagnostic tools. It communicates with every ECU in the car, not just the primary one, and it makes the results clear and easy to understand. That means you can diagnose faults and check the health of your car like a professional mechanic at home. Carly customers say they save thousands on car repairs.
I've just plugged the Carly scanner into the R8's OBD port, connected that to my phone, and it's generated a comprehensive diagnostics report on this car. And actually there were a couple of issues, both to do with the tyre pressure monitoring system. Now, I know the tyre pressure monitoring system on this car is fine, so I've cleared those codes using the Carly app, and now this car has a clean bill of health. If there were any issues with this car to do with the electronics, to do with the air conditioning, to do with the engine, to do with the suspension, I'd see those faults on here, but I'm not seeing them. So this car has a clean bill of health. Now, another great feature of this Carly app is that you can run unlimited free vehicle history checks. Those things cost 30 quid elsewhere, but with Carly I can do as many as I like.
Now you can get a 15% discount on Carly by clicking the link on screen or in the description. By unlocking the truth about your car's health, you could save thousands on car repair bills. Use coupon code INTERCOOLER at checkout to get 15% off. If you're looking to spend not £25,000 but around £200,000 on an R8, maybe you'll prefer the limited edition GT. This is the very last R8 variant, the one Audi built as a send-off for its iconic sports car. Just 333 were built, with 15 of those coming to the UK. This is a very rare car.
This is where Audi R8 development came to a head. This is the ultimate version. 18 years led to this. Audi calls it a track-focused halo model, which makes it sound like a sort of direct competitor to a GT3 RS. It's not that at all. It's actually a really well-rounded supercar with a bit of an edge. So it still rides nicely, it's still well appointed in here. It's not a totally uncompromising kind of car, but there is a seriousness about it. And it does feel quite different to that original R8.
Unlike the original R8 and most other variants, the R8 GT is rear-wheel drive. Its 5.2 litre naturally aspirated V10 produces 611 brake horsepower, 200 horsepower more than the original R8, and 417 pound-foot of torque. Amazingly, given how much more sophisticated it is, the GT is only 85 kilograms heavier than the early car, thanks in part to not having a heavy four-wheel drive system.
Maybe the first thing you notice when you compare R8's old and new is the performance. This is a way faster car. It really is a lot faster. A load more power, a load more torque, and with a DSG transmission, you access it more readily. It's also a noisier car. The V8 is actually quite muted. This isn't. Can you hear that? There's a lot going on when you put your foot down in this car, soundtrack-wise. It's actually quite a gruff kind of sound, particularly from inside. The V10 versions of first generation R8s have a really tuneful soundtrack. I guess with these later cars, Audi had to do a lot to the exhaust, really strangle the exhaust to meet noise regulations, emissions regulations, and so the soundtrack just isn't quite there. But the performance, yeah, that's all there. So yeah, this is a faster car than the V8, and it's easier to drive it fast. As far as the powertrain goes, it's nothing like as satisfying, as engaging as the older cars. Nothing like as engaging. I'm surprised at the ride quality of this thing. I was expecting it to be really quite hard and really stiff, and it's definitely more taut than the V8 cars ride. You do sort of jiggle about a bit more, but there's still that kind of plushness there. It still just takes the edge off the bumps a little bit. There's way tauter body control in this one, loads more grip, tons more grip. If you've got this thing understeering on the road, you're probably having a massive accident. So this overall is a way more intense, more raw, more immediate kind of car, but it doesn't have the older car's sense of occasion, sense of engagement. It doesn't reward like that older car does. The steering, for instance, is pin sharp and it's super quick and responsive, but there isn't the same feel, there isn't the same feedback. Now this one, of course, being a GT, is rear wheel drive. I remember when I first drove a rear wheel drive R8 and I just thought, well, it's better. Audi had finally built a performance car without quattro four-wheel drive, and we just all thought it was so much better. There's the massive weight saving, for one thing. Not having a four-wheel drive system takes a lot of weight out of the car. You also improve the steering massively. And then when you're right up against the car's limits and you're playing with the throttle coming out of a corner, it's just easier to balance. It feels more natural. It's actually a really pure, really quite focused driver's car. It's lovely. But compared to that R8, which is just so brilliant, so enjoyable to drive, I think it just doesn't quite stack up. Let's go and see if Andrew Frankel agrees with me. You want to be a better driver. I know this because everybody who loves cars wants to become a better driver, and I'm going to help you do just that. This is Steve Sutcliffe. He's maybe the best driver that car journalism has ever produced. He once lapped Jenson Button's Formula One car around Silverstone within half a second of the official test driver. He's that good. Steve has written the definitive guide to becoming a more skillful, safer, faster driver for the intercooler, and I'm going to share it with you completely free. All you need to do is click the link and enter your name and email. Over 3 weeks, I'll share Steve's comprehensive guide to driving like a pro straight into your email inbox. So click the link, fill out the form, and you'll be on your way to becoming a better driver. The Audi R8 is dead. The last one was built earlier this year in March. Now there are reports that there will be a new Audi R8 a few years from now.
Yes.
It will be all electric.
Yes.
If there is one.
Yeah.
So as far as petrol-powered R8s go, that's it.
Done.
No more.
No more V8s, no more V10s, no more V10s of any kind in any Audi.
No, that is the last V10 Audi there will ever be.
Yeah.
Which is quite a moment. So this is why we've gathered together an early example and one of the final variants as well, because now's the time to say farewell Audi R8, at least as we know it.
Yeah.
Are you a bit sad about that?
I am, yeah. And I'll tell you why, actually, because I don't think it's any secret that this, when it came out, was a bit of a oh my goodness moment for everybody who thought that all fast Audis could do was understeer, and then they produced this beautiful mid-engine two-seat supercar which goes like the wind and handles beautifully. And then it all kind of ever so slowly over a period of time went slightly off the boil.
Yeah.
And you've got all these R8 with four-wheel drive and lots of power and that sort of thing, and I never cared for any of them until they started making them rear-wheel drive. And then suddenly they discovered some of the magic. They became less cumbersome. More feel returned to the driving experience. And I think a question which we should probably try and answer today is, has it now finally, at the last knockings, got back pretty much to the place where it started from in terms of its desirability as a driver's car?
Well, let's tee it up then. So you've mentioned why the original R8 was such a surprise, but also such a wonderful thing.
We couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember they launched it in Las Vegas.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. I got caught by the police in one, who actually all he wanted to do was look at it because he couldn't believe what a gorgeous car it was.
Just from a purely design point of view, it was extraordinary. You saw one on the road for the first time and you thought aliens had landed.
Yeah. But if you think that Audis have a reputation for being a bit crap to drive, these days, It's nothing compared to what it was like back then.
Yeah.
And you know, it feels, and at the time it felt like Lotus had set it up. And it just felt so deft and so fluent and so easy and balanced and poised and all these things that we just weren't used to talking about in the context of Audi.
Yeah. But actually, the thing that, do you know what? I'd say in the video that the best thing about this R8 is the powertrain. I'm not sure that's quite true actually, because the chassis is wonderful, but the powertrain is a match for it at the very least.
Yeah.
With that wonderful 4.2 litre V8 that revs really well.
Yes.
That has good power, but not bundles of it.
Yeah.
And that gorgeous gated manual gear shift.
The gear shift is wonderful, particularly in this actual car. So let me ask you, did you at any stage today while driving this car think, I wish I had another 100 horsepower?
No. Well, this has got another 200.
Yeah.
And there might be some people who, when they put their foot down in second gear in this thing, expecting it to go woof off the road.
Because they're expecting turbocharged torque,
Yeah.
because that's what we're all so used to these days.
Yeah. Some people might be a bit disappointed. I
Maybe.
say to them, keep your foot in a bit longer and longer and longer, shift up to third, longer and longer and longer, chase the red line, chase gears.
But in your turbo car, you couldn't do that because it wouldn't have the rev range. And you'd be going through the gears so fast that you couldn't do that. And then you'd find yourself, you know, running out of roads or doing a stupid speed. Whereas this, you can really say, this is, I think, is getting close to the limit of what you can really, really experience and enjoy and savour on a public road.
Yeah.
If you're reasonably sensible and driving quite safely.
Yeah, you actually don't need more raw performance than this thing has got. And it sounds great, and the power delivery is so sweet, and it revs high. It's just glorious.
Mega car.
So let's talk about the GT.
Yeah.
This is quite a send-off, really, for the R8 as a whole, and particularly the second generation R8. And I agree with you, when the second generation R8 arrived, I drove a few of them, and I just thought, actually, this isn't anything like as delicate or as fluid as the previous car.
Well, I don't think even the first generation was improved by having the V10 engine in it, because you could get a V10 manual for Gen 1 car. And I just thought it's got all this extra power, but actually some of the balance it got, it just wasn't as nice a car to drive. And then the second generation cars came along, and I didn't really care for any of them. But do you remember they did a very short run, a limited edition of rear wheel drive cars?
Yeah, RWS they called them.
RWS. And that was just like, and we all said, well, why don't you just make that the car? Why don't you just do that? And they're going, no, it's going to be limited edition. I'm not going to do any more of those. Yeah. But they did.
Here we are. Yeah, but you can imagine them wringing their hands thinking, oh, but we're Audi, we're about Quattro. What should we do a rear-wheel drive one?
Yeah.
They must have really struggled with
that
idea.
The whole Quattro thing,
And then, of course, they did it, and we all said, this is way better.
Yeah.
So, in a sense, it kind of undermines the whole heritage of four-wheel drive performance that the Audi brand was built on.
Yeah.
But I'm well done to them for doing more variants, because they are sweeter cars for being rear-wheel drive.
Without any question at all. Yeah. But the question is, so this is pretty much the last, isn't it? The GT. Very rare.
It's the final variant, yeah.
Yeah. So how many in the UK?
15.
15, 1-5.
Yeah.
Out of a total production run of
333.
333.
This is 332.
Yeah. So this is amazing, but this has got the full-on engine in it, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And it's you know, it's got a very robust setup on it and everything. And great though it is, I can remember really quite recently I was just knocking about in a standard rear drive R8 with the low powered engine. I think I had like 540 horsepower. With a gentler setup on it, and I just thought it was nicer. That's the one I'd have.
Well, yeah, and you look at this thing with the flicks here and the big wing on the back.
Yeah.
It's dressed up like a GT3 race car, isn't it?
Yeah.
But actually, it's not a sort of head-banging, totally uncompromising kind of car on the road.
No.
It's still a sort of quite usable thing.
Yeah.
But I kind of tend to agree with you. I'm sure there are other rear drive R8s that would actually be
just a standard 540 horsepower rear drive R8. To me, that's the car. That's the car that made me think that Audi had really rediscovered. And I understand why you do this one, because if you're going to do a final farewell, you don't want to sort of go out with a low power. You know, you've got to throw everything at it, and they have thrown everything at this car, and it's really nice. I'm not in any way dissing this car, but actually I think a sort of a proper aficionado, people who really enjoy driving and feel at everything more than just, you know, raw numbers or brute force or, you know, proper horsepower. I would say a standard car is not only massively cheaper, but probably a bit nicer.
Okay, and of these two, I mean, I think the point about the R8 story, is that it was at its very best Early on,
straight out
very
the
early
box.
on, straight out of the box,
Yeah.
wasn't it? The first one was
Yeah.
the best one.
But at the same time, you know, I think quite often when we do these sort of, you know, old versus new comparisons, there's a sort of natural assumption that, you know, we put on the rose tinted spectacles and, you know, conclude that it's, you know, it's not like that anymore.
Things were better back
Things were
when,
better
yeah,
back
yeah.
when. And I think in this case they were, but actually not by as much as I thought. I think Audi's done a great job in turning the R8 around. And I think to finish off with something like this is a good way to go. No, to me, I think the original is still the best,
Yeah.
but fair play to them, because, you know, it could have been, you know, just sort of fatter and heavier and, you know, more quantity and less quality, but it's not that. It's actually still a real driver's car.
Yeah, it is.
But no, it doesn't float my boat like the original.
No, I agree with that. Well, who knows? Maybe there'll be another one along at some point, and it'll have a load of power, and it'll have a giant stack of batteries.
Yeah,
and it'll be
I
really
did drive
fast.
one. They produced a concept, the R8 e-tron, which I drove a few years ago. Didn't much care for it, but to be fair, that was, you know, that was years ago, and the technology was ancient, and it would be interesting to see. But you get in the original with that stick shift, with that V8 engine, you're not going to replace. You're just not going to replace that.
No. Well said. All right, we'll leave that one there, but thank you ever so much for watching. Remember to give this video a thumbs up and comment below. Those things are really important. Please do that. And I will remind you that you can get Steve Sutcliffe's How to Drive series directly to your email inbox, completely free. There's a link in the description below. Sign up in seconds and get Steve Sutcliffe's How to Drive series directly to your email inbox. And before you go, just remember to subscribe to this channel. And as ever, thank you so much for watching.